Hi. So I want to discuss a very, very important issue in the modern world, and it is really about stress and stress of living in the modern world. Modern world is a bit abstract. We could narrow it down a little bit. Let's say the United Kingdom in 2022. Um, in recent years, the subject of mental health generally has got more attention. And I think overall that's a good thing. It's good that it's being discussed more. It's good that the issues are being looked at more. It's something I do struggle with, and I don't think there's any stigma in saying that, or there shouldn't be, because I think it's commonplace. Um, is there a stigma on mental health? I think things have definitely improved, but I think maybe on some level there is. So if someone says that they have depression or something like that, um, there's going to be one of two responses. Either the person will be, "Oh, yeah, I appreciate that. I've been through it as well," or there will be the approach of thinking that the person must be really fragile or volatile, and that's the wrong approach because clinical depression, although it can be a very crippling and damaging thing, there's nothing unusual about it. I mean, I've never seen it as a particularly complex issue. It's a difficult issue, but when I say it's not complex, what I mean is the issues that bring it about are not complex. People can have things going on in their life, when too many things come together at once, that can lead to serious clinical depression. Now, everyone has an off day, everyone has some stress here and there, everyone has things that will annoy them. But the thing with clinical depression, I've been through phases of it. I wouldn't say I'm going through it right now, but I've been through phases of it. It's when a lot of things come together at once and things just become a bit overwhelming. But this is, I think, fairly common. I'm not going to get into statistics because I just don't know what figures are. But I would say adults who've been through clinical depression in the UK, I say adults because you need to be a certain age to get medication, who have been through clinical depression in the UK, I would guess it's somewhere in the region of 25%. It's a pure guess. I have no evidence for that, but that would be my guess. It might be a bit more, might be a bit less, but it's not that rare. In some areas, it can have implications on a job that you might want to do. I got refused into the Royal Navy reserves, as it so happened, not full time Navy, but reserves, on the grounds of my clinical depression. I did make a video specifically about that, so I'm not going to get into too many details specifically about that. But basically, I'd been through the process, I'd done the training, and the third party involved, Kappa, which is a terrible company, they said we're sorry, but you're rejected for this reason. Now, the reason I say Kappa is a terrible company is because of the sort of infuriating bureaucrats who leave you in the dark and they're impossible to communicate with. You try to send them an email, they don't respond. They have people's lives in their hands, literally. They are, determining people's destinies. And they would very much give the impression that computer says no. I think it's a disgraceful company, and I think they're unaccountable as well. But anyway, the armed forces uses them as an assessor. Um, and even, I think within the armed forces there's an awareness that they're not that competent, that they string people along. But anyway, I don't want to make this video just about that. But it's just one of the examples, actually. It is relevant because bureaucracy, and a sense of empowering people, I think, are very important issues. Why? Because so many companies nowadays and organizations, I think, are not as accountable as they should be to the people they're meant to serve, whether that be customers, whether it be clients. They're just not accountable enough. I mean, if you're selling something or you are providing some sort of service, And this can take many forms. But I think if you're going to have a social media presence, whether that be on Facebook or elsewhere, and people are asking you questions, you should respond to them. So often these sort of groups, they have perhaps a social media presence, but just for their own propaganda, just for putting out the posts, they'll never respond to questions. I think that's arrogant, and I think it can be very frustrating for people trying to get answers. Very frustrating. I would go so far as to say I think there should be rules against it. Now, in a capitalist society, governments have to be careful not to dictate to companies what they can and can't do. There are limits. There's free enterprise, but I think within reason, governments should have the power to say you can't string people along. You can't mess with people's lives. I think definitely there should be legal consequences for scams and things like that, proven scams. But anyway, I digress. I digress. I've had a bit of a stressful day. That's why I'm making the video because it helps me to talk about things, and also because I think it's relevant and it's useful to talk about these things. So basically, today um, I was going to meet a friend. I was in a rush. He had to leave early. That stressed me out a little bit. Then I had a big disappointment in my personal life, or at least perhaps disappointment's the wrong word, but uncertainty, let's say. I don't want to go into the full details about that just yet. I'll see what the conclusion to that is. I mean, things might improve. It's a personal issue. Let's just say it's to do with the online dating. I'm okay with talking about that, but I'd rather do it in another video. But anyway, just for context, so that's on my mind, and it's just things that are. It's just been a bit of a stressful day. Um, I think the cost of living crisis is going to be a real flashpoint. You know, alongside the railway workers now, barristers are asking for a pay rise. Some people might question this and might say, barristers, really? Well, as I understand it, actually, there are legitimate issues there because of the way that some of them are paid is not they're not actually as well off as people think. And there are many cases, as I understand, that they're not even paid. I don't know all the details of this, so I don't want to go into it too much because I might say something that's inaccurate. But one barrister said he got as little as 49 pence for a 1 hour session. If that's true, it's very problematic because if you have people in a pressurizing job who feel that they're very underpaid, they're not going to be motivated. In turn, that's going to be bad for victims of crime because they're not getting the best representation, or defendants for that matter, and that damages due process. So I think that's a big problem. Um, the government will be saying that this is what we're offering. This should be the threshold, the percentage, whatever. But I think a general problem that we're seeing is that the top branch of all of these sort of public service roles, they're getting paid excessive amounts. So this idea that we're all in it together is complete nonsense. It's dishonest. We're not all in it together. Executives, I've already spoken about Network Rail. The sort of money they're on is vast. It really is very, very substantial. And yes, they have responsibility. Yes, they're in demanding roles, but I think that such a gap between those at the top and those lower down the scale, I've no problem with a gap, but not such a big gap. I mean, honestly, if I were to put a figure on it, the chief executive of Network Rail, Andrew Haynes, is on 585,000 a year. It's a lot of money. Now, it's a big company. It's a lot of responsibility. So I think something akin to 150,000 would be about right, i.e., similar to a government minister. Not 585,000. 150,000 is a very comfortable salary, and I think that would be reflective of the responsibility that he has. But more than that, I don't see any justification for it, especially since Railway services in this country are very far from ideal. There are often delays. They're the most expensive in Europe. I think the average British commuter doesn't feel that it's good value for money. So I think the salaries of those at the top should reflect um, how people feel, how customers feel about this service. If it was an outstanding service, trains were always running on time or almost always running on time, um, and so on, and there were very reasonable prices, I think people would say, well, yeah, it's a good service. So they've earned their salary. As it stands, I would question if they have. Um, and I know the excuse is that the system is going through the biggest overhaul in a century. Okay, but if you, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to please the customers. Not only is it the right thing to do, but the government is trying to get people to go green, right? To use cars less. Well, it makes sense. Railways are a relatively clean form of transport, so it makes sense to encourage people to get back on the railways or to travel by rail more, and they will if it wasn't so flipping expensive. Now, in my own case, I can't complain too much because the service I occasionally take, which is Newcastle to Dumfries via Carlisle, it's very reasonable, I have to say. I think it's ScotRail. It's £43 return. That's very reasonable. I can't complain about that. What I'm thinking more of is people in the southeast. I mean, the sort of prices they pay for a season ticket on Southern Rail is outrageous. I mean, we're talking thousands. Utterly outrageous. Um, and there's other companies that are just charging extortionate amounts. I mean, it makes no sense that we could fly to another European country cheaper than we can to take a railway in our own country. It makes no sense. Just got a message, so I'm just going to check it. Yeah, so these sort of things, if we look at the problems in the United Kingdom, they pale into insignificance compared to the problems that people are facing in, say, West Africa. We have a violent Islamist insurgency, crippling poverty. Um, Same with the Horn of Africa, once again facing a food crisis, exacerbated by Putin, not solely caused by Putin, but certainly exacerbated by his actions. Ukraine, for that matter, a country under brutal assault, thousands killed, homeless. So, looking around the world, there are definitely much, much worse situations than we have in the UK. But um, it can be so easy to fall into depression and cynicism looking at human nature, looking at all the bad things that happen in the world. Um, and then you start to think, then there's a cost of living crisis. There is crime. There are a lot of reasons to get depressed and cynical about this world. But I do think it's important to remember the world is a big place and it's never all bad. Never. Even in World War II, not every single part of the world was in a state of war during World War II. There were, even at the heights of World War II, areas of relative tranquility. The point I'm making is it's rarely a case that the situation is so dystopian and awful that it's just the whole thing's going to implode. That's why I think we need to be wary of sort of doomsday scenarios. That's why I'm quite critical of the environmental movement on the ground. That I think there is legitimate issues, but I think that there is also a lot of scaremongering, telling people that billions will die within a few years, as some of them do, is very irresponsible. Is very irresponsible. It will do nothing for people's mental health. Rather, what people should say is the problems will exacerbate, and there are real problems. That's a more responsible and honest thing to say. Um, But I think, there are things that are beyond our control. So, as individuals, we have to really, really, really prioritize our own mental health. We might not be able to change the world, right? There are things that are deeply frustrating beyond our power. Even in a democracy, there's only so much you can do. You can write You can write protest letters, you can petition, you can campaign. Ultimately, things will, in my experience, excuse me, in my experience, you have to force yourself to look away sometimes. I don't mean in a callous way. I mean you have to switch off sometimes because if you don't, it just becomes so overwhelming. So let's talk about mental health. Let's talk about what can be done to alleviate stress. Just stress from a sense of injustice, stress from, let's say, the culture wars, right? If you're an opinionated person and you think, oh, they're full of it, or it just, the whole thing gets overwhelming. Social media doesn't help. Um, so I think there are times that you need to find time to yourself just to breathe, just to relax. I'm not going to say do yoga or a particular technique because it is different for different people, and what might work for one person, what works for me won't work with other people. So find what it is that makes you relaxed and give more time to it. I mean, it's something I need to do. I know the things that make me relaxed, but I don't do them anywhere near as much as I should. Speaking honestly, I'm probably stressed and frustrated more than I am relaxed, if I'm being totally honest these days. But that doesn't mean I'm angry and frustrated and stressed all the time. I think if that was the case, I'd be on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Well, I'm very far from that. But there are times I feel like I need to um, I need to just invest more in the things that I know make me happy. That and by invest, I'm talking about time. I'm not talking about money. Anyway, I'll wrap this up. What is it about the modern world that stresses you out or frustrates you? Maybe not that much. Maybe you are generally a more relaxed person. But I don't even think it's to do with temperament. I just think it's the nature of the world we live in. That even people who are generally of a calm disposition can feel anxious and frustrated. So it is so vital that you find a way to do something that makes you happy. It might be that, for example, if you're struggling financially, you might not have the means to get those things, but there are some things that really are free. I mean, sitting down and breathing, that it really is free. That doesn't cost anything. Um, so there are things that can be done that don't require money. Going for a walk doesn't require money. So it's not all financially involved. That's important to remember. And it can help. I think it can definitely improve mental health. Okay, I hope I hope everyone watching this is having a decent day, better than mine, and I hope you could just find ways to put your mental health first. Thanks for watching.